Hello, and welcome to chapter 5 of Neverwhere. So, last chapter was fairly heavy, and chapter 5 starts out with a whimsical, like, I guess whimsical, but also dark, but also just like this over-the-top fantasy of the market. So, Richard had followed the woman clad in leather because they're both headed towards the floating market, and he's amazed at first because it's being held in Harrods, which is this big department store. And he thinks it's kind of ridiculous to think that this nice upscale department store is holding this magical congregation because um, it's full of stalls and people wandering and what are clearly different species wandering about. But there's people like setting up like cauldrons over wood, and there's people setting up stands selling everything. There's jewelry being sold, clothes being sold, magical potions. There's glass bottles, what he's fairly certain is a genie. The smell of curry, because people are cooking curry. There's open flame and fire and smoke, and there's grilled meats, and it's just this incredible bazaar of bizarre. And so he's overwhelmed, sensory overload, because everywhere you look, there's something to see and smell, and it's just ridiculous. He's very much overwhelmed, and finally he realizes he has no idea where to start. And the lady is like, that he had followed there, the leather clad lady is like, yeah, I got my own stuff to do, so bye. And he's like, what are you? What's your name? And she's like, I sell my body. And she walks off without even explaining that. And he's like, convinced she's a hooker. I mean, but she's got a knife and stuff strapped to her belt, so I think it's kind of obvious that she's not. But like, I don't know, Richard's tired, and he's wandering, and he's overwhelmed, and he's just kind of, I don't know, it's like this weird combination of, like, he's hungry and he's tired, but he's also got all this, like, sensory overload, and he's supposed to be looking for a door, but he also is like, man, I want food, and he's still trying to take in everything he's seeing, because people are selling all these different things, like perfume and silk and dreams and nightmares. That's right. There's a guy like in the background selling, get your first class nightmares here, fresh batch of dreams, and like, so people are literally selling everything, things that you wouldn't think are tangible to sell. But whether you need a sword or some curry or some nightmares, you can buy whatever you need here. There's even a lady selling crap, and I mean crap, like she's selling poop and trash. And for real, that's a stand, and I mean that's disgusting, but it's insane. He's wandering through the rooms of the store, like he's in a trance and overwhelmed, and finally, um, so finally he this is just more wandering and fantastical descriptions and such. And he even asked a couple people if they know who Dora is or where to find her, and he asked a couple different people as he wanders, and all of them kind of blow him off, like they don't answer him at all. And eventually he's like, I'm starving, I need food, so he buys some sandwiches off a lady. Um, he swaps, what does he swap? He swaps a book of matches. Yeah. So, a book of matches and a ballpoint pen, and is what he gives her, and she gives him cottage cheese and lettuce sandwich. Is that a thing? That sounds disgusting. I mean, I don't even like cottage cheese, but most people seem to eat it like on the side of things. Is that a normal sandwich? Is that a thing? Because that sounds horrible. Cottage cheese and lettuce sandwich and a cup of lemonade, and some cookies, nutty cookies. So, but seriously, ew, cottage cheese sandwich. Um, Whatever. He wanders off. He's eating his food and walking, and people are playing music, and people are selling things. Oh, and he finally recognizes someone. It's the guy from the roof, the crazy bird guy, from when he had been following De Carabas around. The crazy bird guy. He is selling information and birds. So he's got all kinds of birds, but he also sells information. And Richard ends up trading him a handkerchief for information because he wants to find Dora. So so Bailey, which is the old bird guy, is like, Dora's holding auditions for a bodyguard. If you follow this and this and this, and you'll get to the room she's in. And all that cost Richard is a handkerchief. Um, so then scene change, and we're down into the room where Dora is auditioning bodyguards, which basically is like a battle arena thing. Like, people are all standing in a circle where two guys are fighting. And it seems to be a mental battle because these two men are fighting, but they're not touching each other. They're standing on opposite sides of the circle. And they're like glaring at each other, but the one all of a sudden has like a bleeding face and a bloody, yeah, like like it looks like he's getting the crap beat out of him, but he's not touching the guy. So it's like this mental battle of wills. And then they're staring without breaking eye contact, and they're like beating each other up with their minds. And so the one guy wins. Who wins? Rooslip wins. Because the guys that were fighting were Fop and Rooslip. Rooslip wins. And then Varney, that bull guy that is under Mr. Croup and Mr. Vandemar's control, jumps in the arena and takes down Rooslip. So they battle it off, and Varney wins. And she's like, ooh, I guess that's my bodyguard. Even though I don't like him, he doesn't look too nice. And Caraboss is like, you don't want a nice bodyguard, you want a bodyguard that's strong. Don't be ridiculous, you silly little girl. So it looks like Varney's going to be her bodyguard. And then Richard had been following up on that information he just bought from Bailey. And he wanders out into the arena, little area where they're auditioning bodyguards. And right when Varney is beating Rooslip up, Varney throws like Rooslip out of the little ring and smashes Richard with him. So Richard found what he was looking for, and found it by having this big bodyguard dude thrown on top of him. And Dora is like, oh my god, Richard, why are you here? What are you doing? You're insane. Oh, you should not be here. And he's like, no, I've been looking for you, and of course you should want to see me. Why don't you know? Why aren't you happy? And she's just really upset that he's here at all. And then Varney and a dwarf are fighting because the dwarf is like still going on with auditions because I guess they're just battling each other, and the winner is going to be who she chooses, I guess. But I guess Caraboss is still watching, but Dora is running over here like talking to Richard, and there's a dwarf fighting Varney, and it's not as unequal as you would think because the dwarf is really fast. Ooh, they use a good word. They say preternaturally? Preter. Preternaturally? I'm pretty sure that's like the same as supernatural or unnatural. Like, he's really fast, but that's just a good word, isn't it? Don't hear that much, but I like it. Whatever. So the dwarf and Varney are fighting, but Varney ends up winning. Richard's trying to smile at Dora and like, why aren't you happy to see me? I worked so hard to find you. And she's like really mad he's here. And he's telling her about the rat people and how he got here, and she's frustrated, and he's getting frustrated because he's like, look, I worked hard to get here. And then he's telling her that he followed a hooker to the market, which is kind of funny because, she's probably not a hooker. I mean, and so Varney beats the dwarf, he wins, but then the lady who he seems to think is a hooker but isn't turns up, and the woman in leather is like, I am around and for these auditions, I'm going to fight you, Varney. And Varney's like, no, they already chose me. And Caraboss and Dora are like, no, we can choose whoever we want. Please continue. So Varney and the lady fight. She kicks his ass. There's like a page and a half description of her ass kickery. And Richard is thunderstruck. He describes her as watching Emma Peel, Bruce Lee, and a particularly vicious tornado all at once. Which is a great description of a fight. And then, and then with a generous helping of a mongoose killing a king cobra, which is kind of sad. Oh, fuck. So a mongoose is like a little, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but they're like a little furry thing. They're a mammal, a mongoose is. And I'm fairly certain they're from India. Probably. I mean, I'm sure they're from Asia, but I'm fairly certain they're from India, native to. But mongooses. So in so in Okinawa, like they used to have mongoose fights. Well, okay. Okinawa has like a lot of habus, and habus are these super vicious, super poisonous. They're mongoose will fuck your mongoose. I mean habus. I'm sorry, I can't talk. Habus will fuck your world up. These things are vicious, and there's a shit ton of them. And so way back, this is like a while ago. Whatever, I don't know how long ago, but like a long time ago, they were like, you know what, how we'll do with these habus? We'll bring over some mongooses because of this description, like mongooses killing king cobras. So even though mongooses are like these small mammal things, like they can kick ass and they kill snakes. Well, they're like, we're gonna import mongooses and like set them out in the wild, and they'll help cull the habu population. Like they're like, okay, if habus and mongooses fight, then there'll be less habus, and that's a thing. But it backfired because I guess like mongooses and habus, one is nocturnal and one's not, and they like different areas. I guess mongooses and cobras have more in common than mongooses and habus, enough to the point where the habus weren't killed by the mongooses as thoroughly as hoped for. But also the mongooses were an invasive species because like when you put a new species into an ecosystem, it fucks the ecosystem up. So then the whole ecosystem there was just it was a problem. It was bad. But but anyways, eventually staged fighting was a thing. Like they would purposely have a captured mongoose, like they would have mongooses and habus that they would keep, like in cages, and they would make them fight like that. That was like a touristy thing and like a sport thing. Like that was a fun, common thing that people did, and they didn't think it was like it wasn't an issue at the time. People were like, "Oh, this is a great. They fight so vicious. It's horrible. It's bloody. It's awful. Let's watch it." And oh, it's anyways, like animal rights groups were like, yeah, no, you can't do this. Eventually it got outlawed. I mean, it was big enough, it was like a big thing for a long enough time, like it's still well known, and they still have like mongoose and habu t-shirts you can buy. Like it's a huge deal. um um but yeah, so animal rights groups were like, you can't do that. And that was in like the early 2000s. Yeah, I want to say early 2000s. I'll have to look that up, but early 2000s, animal rights were like, no, you can't make mongooses and habus fight to the death for sport. Like that's wrong. Like fighting animals to the death is wrong. Um, so they can't do that anymore. But there's a couple tourist places here where they're like, oh yeah, we used to have those fights, but they're outlawed. But like they still sell like stuffed animals, like a stuffed mongoose and habu like you set, or like they'll sell a T-shirt that has like a habu and a mongoose like hugging. And there's this like touristy thing, Okinawa World. It's like down south in Okinawa, and it was one of the places they used to do those. And they have like this long water tank with two separate lanes. So like the thing can't. So like if you put one thing in one lane, it can't touch the thing in the other lane. So like they're two separate lanes. And they make a habu and a mongoose race because they're like, oh, we used to have fights, but that's illegal now. So now we make them race. And which I guess is better because, I mean, well, of course it's better. There's no fight to the death, but I mean, there's still the argument of how you're okay with captive animals. But that's still much better than fighting to the death. But yeah, so these mongooses are these furry little mammals that look like cute and cuddly, but they're vicious enough to kill these reptilians, these scary ass snakes that will fuck up humans. So mongooses are hardcore, and this lady is a mongoose, and I would buy a T-shirt of her. I don't know this. Fuck. Okay, that might. No, I think I decided not to edit. Yeah, I put up. No, I won't. I'm not gonna edit. It's like cheating to edit because that's not in the spirit of this. I guess I won't edit that out. But now you know more about mongooses than you ever wanted to know. I guess that's mostly accurate. I fucking. You know what? Okay, the lady beat Varney. He's pissed. Um, uh, but she won. She kicks his ass so hard that even he finally backs off. And then the lady is like, I'm called Hunter. And Dora's like, the Hunter? And she's like, yes. So, like, she's famous. And the market's over because the bell's ringing and everyone's like, okay, there's 5 minutes to go. The market's about to be over. We need to go. This is our bodyguard. Goodbye, everybody. And so Dor chooses Hunter, the lady that Richard thought was a hooker, which is clearly not. She's hired muscle. So Dor is like, yes, Hunter's my bodyguard. Carabas is like, let's get a move on. The market's gonna be over. And once the market's over, the truce is over. So they want to get a move on and get out of there because they are still on the run, from whoever had butchered Dor's family is still looking for Dor. So they're trying to get a move on. And then Richard is like, well, okay, I'm gonna tag along. So he follows them as they walk off, and they're kind of Hunter and Carabas are going back and forth, just kind of talking about, yeah, we're hiring you, it's dangerous, blah blah. And Richard is like, hey, I know you guys are busy, but I want Jack. Stop it. Sorry, my cat is being a cat, which is a good thing, but not because he's trying to mess with something he's not supposed to. Anyways, Richard's tagging along. He's not really wanted. They're kind of not talking to him, and he's really frustrated because his life is turned upside down because he helped that girl, Dora, in the first place, and he really just wants some answers and to tag along, and they're kind of being dicks to him. And De Carabas is straight up go away. And Dora's nicer because she keeps saying, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. She says I'm sorry 5 times within 2 pages. But eventually they're they leave him. They abandon him. They're in the sewers and they walk off and leave him. So Dora and Carabas and Hunter strode off through the dark and leave him. They leave Richard and Richard leans against a wall and listens to their footsteps echoing away. And so finally he's sitting in the dark by himself and the water is just whooshing and pumping in the distance, and he says shit to himself, and he sits down on the cold damp stone and he's alone and he's in the dark, and for the first time since his father died, Richard Mayhew began to cry. Which I think is fair. He's had some shit happen, hasn't he? And I mean, he lost his dad, his mom, so he's already alone in the world. He had Jessica and he lost her helping Dor. He had a job and an apartment and a life, and it's all gone. And and it's all because he helped her that any of this happened in the first. Well, not his mom and dad dying. That happened a long time ago. But he's alone. He doesn't have a mom or a dad or siblings, and he did have a life he was building with Jessica, and he traded that all up, and now he literally doesn't exist. All he's eaten is a cottage cheese sandwich in the past 24 hours, and that sounds terrible. And I would probably sit down and cry just because I was alone in a dark sewer, let alone any of the other things that's happened to him. So yeah, Richard, fucking shit, mate. Have a cry. Sorry and stuff. Don't judge Richard too harshly. Let him have his cry. I don't like that when people say oh, guys shouldn't cry because manly men don't cry. I think everybody cries, and you shouldn't fuck with people and be like, oh, crying is a sissy thing, because it's not. It's just a thing. And yeah. So Richard has his cry, and we've seen change to Varney. So Varney, that bodyguard, Varney was the guy that Krupp and Vandemar wanted to win and rig it so that they would have an easier time capturing Dor. And he lost to that Hunter lady, and Varney's like, oh, fuck, those guys are gonna fuck me up, so I can't go back home, so I'm gonna go to a secret hideaway. So he's being all secretive and double backtracking and running through tunnels, and he's being super stealthy. But Mr. Krupp and Vandemar find him anyways, and by the time they finish with him, all that's left was when Mr. Krupp and Mr. Vandemar were finished. However, one would have been hard put even to notice the slight stain on the floor at the bottom of the staircase. So he's fucking destroyed. There's not all that's left is a small stain of blood. He doesn't exist anymore, basically, which I'm assuming means they ate him, which is so gross. And I mean, Varney's gross and I don't like him, but it doesn't mean I want him to get eaten. And then Hunter, Dor, and Carabas are walking, and Dor is freaking out, no, I can't do this, we can't leave Richard, it's wrong. He's only in this situation because he helped me. So it's a 3-way argument between her, Dor, the Marquise, and Hunter are just arguing about Richard. And by the end of it, Carabas is like, oh, he's probably dead already by now because of how long we've left him alone. And then the next the next scene change starts with Richard was not dead, which is nice. It's good to know he's not dead. He is, however, sitting in the dark, wondering what to do. He's cold and miserable and trying to make a plan, and he can barely see. Like, it's so dark he can't even hold his hand out in front of his face and see it. So how do you start wandering around when you can't even see, you know? So I don't blame him for not having got up and started jogging. But Dora comes back for him, and she's like, please come with us. Your life's going to be miserable even if you are with us. Like, where we're going is dangerous. I'm in danger. You'll be in more danger. But, so yeah, they decide to team up, and she hugs him, and she's happy that he agrees to come with them. And the Carabas looks pissed. He looks as if he had been forced to swallow a pulped lemon. But they're together, which is, you know, Richard doesn't have a lot going for him, so the one person he does know in this crazy-ass world, like, yeah, it's a good thing that they're all teamed up, because they're already all in danger, so might as well be in danger together, right? And then he's like, so what are your plans? And they're like, oh, we're going to find an angel. And Richard begins to laugh, like, hysterically, break down. And he's like, an angel, like, those don't exist. And they're like, well, with all the other things you've seen that haven't existed, why would angels be so much different? And he's just giggling helplessly, and even though it is rational that all these impossible things he has seen should make him believe in more impossible things, but I guess wrapping his brain around the idea of an angel is a bit too much. So he finally quiets down and follows along with them. They go traipsing off down a dark tunnel. But he still whispers to himself an angel and shakes his head. I guess just at the ridiculousness of it. And then we get our final scene change before the end of the chapter. There were candles all over the Great Hall. And this is capital G, capital H, so the Great Hall. And this is not Harry Potter's Great Hall because this is underground and there's waterfalls, and rock pools. So not that Great Hall. Even though they both have candles, this is a different Great Hall. It's underground. There's waterfalls, there's rock pools, there's candles clustered along the floor and up the sides of the wall, like where the rocks are, like, because it's a rock wall and it's got like texture to it, so there's like candles in the wall as well. And there's candlesticks, and iron pillars holding candles. There's a shit ton of candles, and the candles are unlit. So we just had this description of a shit ton of candles, but none of them are lit. And then a tall form is walking from one end of the Great Hall down to where the waterfall is, and as the form walks by, the candles flicker into life. So nothing touches them. There's no one lighting them. There's no fire being spread. Just the sheer presence of this form walking in front of the candles is what makes them light. And the figure is described as being more than white. Like their robe, their clothing they're draped in is more than white. A color, or an absence of all colors, so bright as to be startling. Which is kind of hold on. How does that work again? It's kind of like with black and white, like whether or not they're colors, because like, isn't the argument where white is the absence of color and black is all the colors, is like one. Well, it depends on how you argue it, doesn't it? Because if you're doing like if you're gonna do physics with like wavelengths versus like paint pigment, because like if you were with white, like sunlight, like when you learn about sunlight and the fact that you need a prism to diffract light to see a rainbow, because like sunlight is white light, it's all the wavelengths, which means it's none of, like, that's why there's no color to it, because it's like all the wavelengths, it's reflecting all of the colors. So it wouldn't be the absence of all colors, because it would be all the colors. But if you're doing like paint pigments, like when you're like learning art and stuff, and you're like, oh, all the pigments is like how you get black, like where absolutely no pigment would be white. But yeah, that's weird, isn't it? Colors are weird. I don't know. I should go. That's something else I should Google. I bet there's a real answer that's makes more sense. But it's a good description. It got the point across, and I didn't need to do any of that. But oh well. So mysterious bright white figure lights candles just by their mere presence existing. Barefoot on the rock floor, pale and wise and gentle and lonely and beautiful and androgynous. So 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 they are androgynous, beautiful, lonely, wise, gentle, debatably colored thing being drinks out of the pool, and then at the end of the room, and then walks back out of the room, and as the thing being, I shouldn't say thing, as the being leaves the room, all the candles that were lit go out, and it had no wings, but was unmistakably an angel. Islington left the hall. So that is the end of chapter 5. We end chapter 5 with a sneak peek of Islington. And thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out and sticking with me this far. And thanks.